I'm not sure how many stragglers we are waiting for. Thank you so much for being so speedy. I popped into 4 of the 6. I couldn't get to 6 of the 6, but the conversations felt nice and you had more space to ask questions. Did you have some good chats? Were they good parallel sessions? Hands up if you are glad you went and had a bit more intimate time. Yeah. Please don't forget, I'm giving top lines only and not everything. Am I waiting? Am I good to keep going? I'm good to keep going. Don't forget that feedback will come in an executive summary. The executive summary of this event is not going to be ready the day after it, so don't go when it doesn't arrive or isn't posted online, okay? You need to give all of these good people some time to get it together. As you know, there's the big to put an event together and then the other side. So you will get an executive summary, but just take your time. A couple of things that I picked up. It was very interesting. I'm just going to quote actually you, Mr. Sheen. I'm just going to quote you in this room. You were talking about the Observatory, but just the really relevant point that you made, of course, is that the landscape for research careers is radically changing. AI, changing how we do research, globalization, lots of opportunities, lots of challenges, engaging more with society and in those multidisciplinary teams. And then you've got sort of, you're saying that the messages help us researchers in actually delivering on the green and digital transition. And I pick up on what you said, in responsible ways. So we did hear there has been a shift, and I liked the first speaker, who I didn't catch her name. Thank you. You said that there has been, I like that, a switch from system needs to needs of researchers, and that in itself is progress, quite apart from what needs to come. I did listen to Janusz Potočnik, and it was just there was some startling statistics that the Slovenian government a few days ago adopted a decision to cover the costs of last year's extreme weather events. But those costs are 17% of the annual budget revenues, right? So as he rightly asked, what happens to healthcare? What happens to education? What happens to all of those other sectors that need funding? So really important to think about that. And also it reminded me of what he said yesterday. We are not keeping mitigation on the same level as adaptation. That needs some rethinking there. But there were so many other facts and figures, not least the social cost of carbon and what it costs societies. And then it was nice, I sat in on the bioeconomy, driving competitive sustainability through bioeconomy solutions. That was an interesting quote. Sometimes we look at whether something is small scale and get it to large scale, but we need to ask what's the right scale. And also, of course, the market impacts how successful a product is, the consumer uptake, and that is also dictated by what the regulation is saying and where the conversation is going. So that's something very important. And then something was mentioned, which always for me, what impact do we want to achieve? Not just what technology approach do we want to adopt? What do we want to get, first of all? So listen, loads of good things, and you will, as I said, get some of those key points in the executive summary. Now, I promised you a dynamic closing session, no stress on the 2 speakers. All right, so please could you now give a very warm welcome to Barbara Weitgruber, who is Director General for Scientific Research and International Relations at the Austrian Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research, and also, of course, our Director General of DG Research and Innovation, Marc Lemaître. Warm welcome to both of you. You can come. Put you there. We have to put the rose between the 2 thorns, Mark. That's the thing, okay, I feel. You want to squint? Well, I tell you why. We've left those because we're going to do a little bit of an exercise, a fishbowl setting that I am going to invite in a moment. Once we've looked at your takeaways that came into Mentimeter, and once I've heard your top line takeaways, I have a couple of questions for each of you. Then I thought it might be nice to get a few, just 3 or 4, 2 or 3 brave souls from the audience, you can even come up in pairs, there's enough chairs, to just make, and you know by now, a concise comment or ask a concise question, okay? Nicely. There we go. I had that. I think they'll be more scared of you than me, though. You're the big boss. I'm the mere minion. Okay, no? All right. Should we first of all, for your benefit, because I think they can also show it for us on this screen, should we have a look at what the main takeaways, it came through in a bit of a running text. There we go. Oh, that's quite nice. Look, hopeful anticipation of R&I being prioritized. So not just anticipation, but there is hope behind it. That's nice. ERA is for everyone. Sustainable competitiveness. You also talked about that yesterday. Building a better ERA. What do we want to be doing? You know, we had a look at the achievements. We had a look at some of people's dreams and wishes going forwards. Need to keep on working. More collaboration needed between researchers and policymakers. I'd say more mechanisms, more, you know, more structures, more understanding how that can actually happen. New connections. I hope people have people had good. Do some people go away with new connections for the future from this? Does anybody raise your hand if you've met somebody that you think, oh, well, that's great. More EU. Promote and increase innovation. That's nice. Feeling connected in a mission. And very concretely, listen to the voice of the early career researchers. I don't think any of us would disagree. We need to break boundaries and silos. We know this. How do we make it happen more? Well, there you go. And then you have there exactly what I'm saying. All fine, but who's responsible and who's taking the actions? Don't wait. Don't kick the can into another silo. The idea of the fifth freedom is alive again. Absolutely. Anybody who would like to own it's time to move from policies to practice and implementation and less talk? Who put that one? Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. Lots has been done, but don't take your eye off the ball. You know, to progress this, we talked about the different forms of collaboration. There is still a long way to go to the fifth freedom. Thank you. Gender equality, absolutely. Thank you for raising that again. We heard about that again, this issue. A lot of progress, but God damn it, a lot more progress. Let's not say, oh, look what we've achieved, and drop that ball. So I did hear that yesterday, and very, very complex, the intersectionality. We heard some good examples of what it means for different women from different cultural backgrounds going into different spaces and what those challenges look like. So a lot there, I guess, based upon that, and I'm sure probably that will echo something of what you may say. The first question for each of you, for just a briefest couple of minutes, please, just because these people's brains are so full. Your takeaways, if we can keep in mind the two guiding questions, which was, listen, how is all of this, you know, contributing to the realization of the fifth freedom and a more competitive Europe? And sorry, let me backtrack once. Sorry, I'm not being a very good moderator. Tell us in a few sentences what you do in your day job. That's what I want to ask, because you have a lot to do. Just, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I have even more than on the screen, because I'm also in charge of gender and diversity management.
Okay.
And I have the honor and the privilege to be the ERAC member state co-chair jointly with Marc. So I have two hats, or many hats.
Many hats.
The best framework conditions possible for the community I'm in charge of within the Austrian and the European setting to be competitive internationally, in very different ways.
Okay. Should we start with you? Do you want to say, you know, what some just 3 or 4 of the key kind of things that you heard and literally as they support, you know, these two questions that have been this running thread throughout?
Well, I think and I was, of course, only able to be in 2 of the workshops and the plenaries. all of you having contributed to the concrete progress we have made in the ERA policy agenda in the past 3 years. I think we should really congratulate all the researchers, all the stakeholders, because the shift, and I think it became quite clear in some of the workshops, the European Research Area has been around for a long time, and as Enrico Letta said so well, the fifth freedom has been around twice already, so let's hope all good things come in three. Maybe this time we now really make it happen, but with this renewed setup where the stakeholders are involved from the very beginning in the co-creation of member states and the European Commission, I think the European Research Area actions have become more tangible, and also the exhibition clearly showed what is happening very concretely for individual researchers in all the member states, but also with the international partners. There are concrete guidelines. There are the recommendations for the careers, which now are taken up by the member states to be implemented by the individual institutions. In research assessment with COARA, people are working, and it's culture change, it's taking time, but there are concrete steps taken, and there are the research funders, there are the research performing organizations jointly working, and all the researchers, the young researchers, the networks of researchers are involved both at the national levels and at the European level. Austria, as many other countries, has developed a national action plan to implement the European Research Area, the policy agenda. We even had the Council of Ministers adopt our agenda for 3 years, with all the ministers being present. We have a stakeholder forum and a symposium every year, and a report. So I think it's become much more visible and also more tangible, and the pressure is much higher because there are concrete aims laid down at the European level, but also at the national level. And within the co-creation with the Commission, we are already working towards the next policy agenda, and I think the momentum, and that's what I take from this conference, it's so positive, and people really are part of a bigger thing, and the feedback you got, European Research Area is for everyone. That's it, that's exactly it.
Can I just pick up before I turn to you, Marc, on just one thing and the issue? So we heard yesterday, diverse inputs also from member states, and particularly today. And here's, somebody outside the political arena, but a European, and thankfully, luckily, still a Belgian, since I had that opportunity after my country of birth departed. But in this, the beauty of Europe is all of those different countries, all of those different cultures that come with their own spirit, their own desire to move things, their own innovative ways of seeing things. And yet, we're not always coalescing that knowledge and talent. Do you, when you talk particularly there about Austria, does Austria look at does it work in practice that you go, right, part of the EU, let's have a look what they're doing. Let's see if we can replicate that. Let's see if we might be able to take that and adapt it. Is there that spirit?
Well, I think, yes, and not just in Austria, but we have this, it's called mutual learning exercise, where with support of the European Commission, member states who have an interest in certain topics exchange among themselves and with experts on certain issues, and there's a concrete outcome, not just a report, but concrete work packages which are then implemented. So you actually see best practice, but you also share what has not worked, and that is very important because then you don't need to make the mistakes others already did. And of course you have different cultural settings, but you can still see what is transferable into your own country. And in some issues, like one of the challenging issues that was discussed also with the scientific freedom, academic freedom, international cooperation on value-based international cooperation and tackling foreign interference. Of course, this is an issue where all the EU member states have a high interest in moving together. and have one single voice. And in others, of course, it's quite different in different settings, in different cultural settings. You will have diverse pathways, but the overall aim is the same.
Okay.
And of course, the cooperation with OECD is so valuable, and there has been much more now in many of the areas, also in the like-minded cooperation, of course.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Marc, we heard from you yesterday. You headlined. For you, I mean, and I know in your team, some of the main takeaways looking at this, you know, we're looking, you know, finally I think you said third time lucky, the realization of the fifth freedom, and that, you know, sustainably competitive Europe. What would be your kind of the enthusiasm, the enthusiastic takeaway of how it can contribute, Era?
I spoke of competitive sustainability.
Sorry,
there is,
sorry.
There is a nuance there, and I'm sure Janesh in particular would want me to put it exactly in that order. But first, yes. What I do read from the messages is a lot indeed of enthusiasm, and I'm extremely happy about that. Not too much self-doubt, but a realization that we are at an extremely favorable juncture, and we should really make the best of it now. We should not doubt that policymakers are turning to research now. They are putting a lot of emphasis and perhaps excessive hopes into research, and we should see that as an incredible opportunity for us, for going so much further than we have over the past 25 years. And what do I mean by so much further? Barbara rightly, I think, turned around researchers and the conditions for researchers in Europe through different dimensions of our actions. And this, to me, remains a top priority to continue to work on, because we need to ensure that Europe is ultimately the most attractive place to do research in the world, because we are in a competition with the rest of the world. And we do see European researchers turning to other parts of the world. Not to mention, especially given our demographic trends, that we need to work very, very hard at attracting talent from outside. But what we are seeing today, and we should be very worried about it, is that when it comes, for instance, to artificial intelligence, well, we have outflows. And we know the layer of competency today across the world is relatively thin on AI, and we need to build it up. But seeing that part of that thin layer is in fact moving to the US right now should be a wake-up call for us. So it is about indeed creating the best conditions, putting, you know, talent attraction or retention at the center by creating the best conditions. Which brings me naturally to, I think, a second dimension that we need to make more progress on together. And here I also come to this central notion, which I stressed yesterday, of scale. We need to use Europe's scale. So the second point I would put focus on is, as part of the conditions we offer to researchers, our research and technology, I would say infrastructures, how we develop them, how we build on what we have, how we arrive at being really at the frontier of what is available, and how we make everyone benefit in Europe from those infrastructures, how we improve access to them. And then the third thing, and that's also related, I think, to the follow-up question you had for Barbara, like how do individual member states look up beyond their immediate plate and see where are the opportunities. The third thing is about having a minimum of alignment and of, let me call it, ganging up of financial means coming, of course, partially through the European level, but then with national contributions to that. Let me use a term which comes from external relations. I would call it in a Team Europe approach. So coalition of willing people. Think indeed of what we are now pushing on solar technologies, for instance, on hydrogen today, and tomorrow I would hope on AI. We should avoid sticking to our national boxes. Everyone is aware we need to do something on AI, but if we all do it in our little corners, we won't achieve very much, and we will not keep up with the competition. So for me, it is about talents, improving the conditions. It is about infrastructures, and it is about more cooperation, coordination, additionality of funding means at European and national level.
Thank you. And just to pick up on this issue of AI, I would say that's one of the key. You say we shouldn't do it in our corners. We also shouldn't do it in our corners because it's one of those conversations that is so prominent in the public arena that there is no excuse for, in my humble opinion, managing this across borders, because it's right up there and it's a preoccupation and it's a worry, and that's something that would benefit from a much more coalesced and harmonized approach. Can I just ask literally for you to answer the last question so I can give a little bit of space to these good people, maybe in just 2 sentences, because it's a kind of a waving your wand wish. What do you wish for member states to do better or differently to finally get this third time lucky fifth freedom a reality? And what would be your wish for either the Commission or the institutions to focus on, to do better or differently? Same question to you.
Be bold. Be bold. That's all we need to do together.
And what stops boldness?
Well, we have so far done incremental progress, but we have not had a complete change of paradigm. We have seen the letter report, the Draghi report, the mission letters. So I think, and you said it, the crossroads. I really think it's now up to European Commission, the member states, European Parliament. If we continue more or less just improving the framework conditions and continuing the same pathway, or maybe really go to the next step.
Yeah, thank you.
At the next level.
Yeah. Yes, so everybody looks to the EU for a certain added value, as it should. What would you hope for from those institutions, or as I said, from the Commission, to, make that fifth freedom a reality?
In all honesty, I would not divide up the world between the member states and the EU institutions. Exactly on this topic, this is indeed about having a shared ambition together and discussing together and agreeing together, how ambitious we want to be. And there, of course, I would hope, yes, for boldness on all sides, for really aiming very high, for aiming for a decisive jump in quality and in intensity of these shared ambitions. And I, of course, hope that the incoming Commission, especially, would be acting according to what has emerged through the political guidelines that we have seen, through the mission letters that we have seen. I think there we have all the seeds we need to really change the landscape over the very next years. But this has to be a partnership between between all. And it's not just EU and member states, it is also indeed about the whole ecosystem, all stakeholders.
I see that it is indeed a perfect storm of circumstances that make this, I mean, there are lots of defining moments, but it would be a grave missed opportunity right now with all of those external, challenges. Then we have this new commission. So this is the moment to really drive it forward. I think there's no excuse for all its complexity. I thank you. Shall we just see if there's a couple of brave souls before... we do have lunch, don't we, for these good people afterwards? Do we? Yes, okay. I suddenly thought I'd promised you lunch and you only get, I don't know, a small biscuit. Anyone want just a couple of people? You two here? Do you want to come up together? Okay, so there's 3. So we might only have time for 3. Oh, come first, yes. Do you want to come up to... Sorry, I looked so surprised, didn't I? That was not welcoming at all. Oh, yeah, come and sit in 3. Perfect. Who was cackling there? Okay. All right, you have the mic.
But may I say, this doesn't count as being brave, right?
Oh, you've got a nice pen. I'm just going to take that nice pen compared to my pen. That is a nice pen. Okay, there you go. All right. Gentleman first. Nice and concise. You know the drill.
Yes, I know.
And who are you?
I'm John Edwards. I represent the applied sciences in higher education.
Yes.
And when we created the single market all that time ago, at the same time as creating the single market, we created a cohesion policy, because we know that integration leads to diversion within the single market. What will we do to safeguard that not happening even more with the 5th freedom? And I believe Direct General knows a lot about this from your previous role, but also the centrally managed programs, not just the co-managed programs.
Shall I just let you answer that now in as beautifully nutshell as you can, please?
Well, my first preliminary point would be that we should not, and with the help of Mr. Letter, I'm confident we will not, we should not be under the illusion that we have a single market. We still need to work very, very much on that. And in fact, Mr. Draghi built on that to show, for instance, we want a competitive, dynamic, innovative, and so on Europe. Well, let's start, for instance, by having really a single market where startups can scale up, which they cannot today in Europe, and that's why, again, they go to the United States. But on, indeed, this question of concentration of economic activity and of innovation. I would say that when it comes to research and innovation, the concentrating powers are even bigger than on economic activity across the territory. And you see that in Europe, but it's not specific to Europe at all. In the US, you have enormous concentrations of the main innovation hubs as well. So we benefited very recently from a policy paper by ESIR, an expert group supporting us in our thinking, and I believe it's really worth looking into that and reflecting on what they suggest. Basically, what they suggest is that we should not at all counter these forces as such. So to be among the best, you need that concentration. But we should start making I would say, a decent job at not just having these hubs, but having spokes and having a network around building on these hubs. And here, I think we do have a central policy question. How do we best support this, and through what instruments do we best support this? I will not provide an answer to you today, but for sure we need to take care of that and to do a much better job than we have until now in a very scattered way. Us with regional innovation valleys and cohesion policy with smart specialization and all of that. We need to have a better plan than these patchworks.
He liked your question because he leant forward with such gusto, whereas my questions, it was like, Kat, really? That's boring. Okay, so these are awkward chairs. Can I just tell you, if you do that, you don't feel very ready, do you, to ask or answer a question? It's way too casual. You feel like you need a gin and tonic. So that's why we're all sitting forward. Beautifully concise. Who are you?
Thank you, Katrina. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Tatiana Panteli, Eurotech Universities Alliance. I wanted to add a little bit more on innovation side. I was actually just at the session on startups and knowledge valorization, and it's great to see Mikkel is here as well. So when Mark, you said we need to create the best conditions for our researchers, absolutely right, so we are hands up for that. But also we need to create the best conditions for our innovators. And of course, we are technical universities and we work across the whole ecosystem, and we know that one cannot be done without another. Of course, to contribute to our competitiveness and economic growth, we need innovators more than anything else, of course, researchers too. And of course, lack of single market, as we just discussed at the session, it's a huge problem for researchers and innovators as well. So we really need to invest our effort to improve on that. Mikkel came with an example that in one country you need 6 weeks to create a company, and in another one just 1 week. I mean, this is the issue which we can deal with. But of course, we cannot deal with everything at the EU level. And here, of course, it's great to have national governments and regional governments. So we need to work across the whole ecosystem, and we really need to help each other and create bridges between our systems to make Europe stronger again.
Sorry. Let me just ask, just momentarily, Barbara, if you wanted to, come back on, did that resonate for you, that point?
Yes, of course. I think, as you said, the researchers and innovators, it's all part of the European research area. And you said alignment before. In knowledge valorization, we have recommendations, we have guidelines. But in the end, the question is how aligned are they all implemented at national levels and at institutional levels? And of course, the venture capital part, the Draghi report, the Letta report clearly point to the weaknesses we still have, but they would actually be part of this paradigm shift that I see is needed. That cannot be done on an individual level of member states. That's a big European Union thing if we want that.
Can I turn to you, Annika? I think you can have the last word of a question, so to speak. The last question. Comment.
So I met a lot of passionate people, so I'm very glad the audience was as passionate about their work as I am. There were great ideas, great frameworks are already developed. There are some challenges still, but one of the questions that arose to me was many of my colleagues don't know what the ERA is. I had to explain to all of them what the ERA is and what it means and what it does. So I have 2 small questions, sorry, Kat. The first one, is this on purpose, or would you like to see this differently? And the second one is, beautiful things are being developed for researchers, which is great, but how can researchers hold the ERA, the EU, responsible for actually making it happen, all of these beautiful ideas and framework, for making them happen in practice?
Okay, it's got to be, because we're 5 minutes over, it's got to be beautifully, you're in an elevator with somebody you really can't stand and you have that much time. You want to run out the doors to answer. So I don't mind coming back on both. Do you want to start, Barbara? Yeah.
That challenge we have had since the very beginning of the European research area. And I can only talk about Austria. What we are doing is having all this stakeholder involvement. We have virtual meetings. We have several hundred people involved in our different fora. We have a committee where the whole sector, the tertiary sector, the institutions are all involved and also part of our yearly ERA symposium, but it's, of course, the responsibility of all the institutions then also to provide the information to their own researchers. But the European Research Area is an integral part of our 3-year performance agreements with all our public universities and our research performing organizations and our funding organizations. And of course, then it's up to them to do the next steps. And we also involve the student union and the young researchers at the national level. And I hope all the other member states do that as well.
For whom does that resonate, by the way, this issue of that Annika said, I have to actually inform other people about ERA? Okay, so perhaps the last word to you, coming back, well, on either, but again, beautifully concise, because you could answer either, but last word to you, Marc.
Well, first, regarding ERA and how well or how badly it's known, and how also responsible we are in front of researchers. I think a good demonstration that we do want to be held accountable is that we have the ERA Forum. You know, it's, I think, very broad in its participation, and everyone can voice whatever they think should be pushed, improved, and so on and so forth. And we do not hide the evolution, be it progress or lack of it. We will, in only a couple of weeks, be putting forward a report showing what has been achieved, but also what remains to be done based on the ambition that we had defined earlier, which I hope will be supplanted by much bigger ambitions for the future. Now on ERA and innovation, I believe that we have contributed greatly, probably, to these two things being seen largely as separate, because we had indeed European Research Area, and then we put forward a new European innovation agenda, separate track. What we see in the mission letter is there is talk of an ERA Act, and there is talk of an Innovation Act. I would not worry. These are two opportunities for high ambition. So, you know, I take it positively. But where I'm absolutely with you, and again, referring to the Draghi report, you know, great read, we are now at a juncture where we need to be obsessed with impact. Economic impact, societal impact. And I'm not saying this, you know, to push to the side blue sky research and all of that. It is as crucial as ever, but we need to think in a continuum, much more than we have until now, and think about how research can lead to innovation and how innovation can lead to societal and economic impact in the sense of competitiveness, indeed. So on this, we need to think hard how to integrate all that.
Thank you very much. I had something in my head to say off the back of that, but I cannot, so it's gone. I'm sorry, but that's probably good, because you should have the last word on that. You could stay with me, because my closing is super, super short, and then we don't have all of that faff. But first of all, very, very warm thanks to these very dynamic, thank you. And as I always think, it's not about having all the answers to questions now, it's the fact that you ask them, and they will also take them away. That is also critical. Just for me to say a huge thank you, obviously thank you to the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation. There are a tremendous amount of teams, as you know, that went into the putting together of this event, really. to put the parallel sessions together, 12 parallel sessions, to put the plenary sessions together, those 4 sessions. So huge thanks to all of those colleagues, because they do all this alongside their day jobs. So it's a hell of a lot of work. And thanks also in that to the Inspiring Era team. Big thanks to you, also to Janusz Potocznik and to the Commissioner, Ivanova, for coming and, I was going to say, giving such a robust commentary at our event, and also for stimulating these good people's brains. Enormous thanks to the speakers. You rock up and then you are just told that you have 1.3 nanoseconds. We are so grateful for that. Cannot emphasize that enough. So
it's better than attoseconds, right?
But it's better, yes. Oh.
But you do get a Nobel Prize.
Ah, nice. Okay. I'm going to use that one next time. So could we just give some applause, please, to all of our speakers, including you. Don't forget that this was online as well, so I look at the online audience, and none of that is possible without the technical crew. It really is quite something. It's quite a faff, and it requires a lot of skill, okay? So thank you very much. And of course, the photographer and the videographer, who must have burned so many calories running around, I can't even imagine. But one of the biggest thank yous is to you and to you online, because there is no event without you. It's not an event, it's just a load of chat, right? You know, dinner party. So thank you to you for your attention, for your active participation. There was nice feelings in the parallel sessions, and to all of the ERA community. If you want to get on social media, there you have the hashtags here, so plenty of ways to do that. Don't forget, there will be an executive summary, as I said, not straight away, that's very important. Can I leave you with my 2 favorite quotes? Because I am also obsessed with collaborating and how to have better conversations, which I think social media is just skewing. My favorite is from George Bernard Shaw, the activist, the writer, the philosopher, and he says the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Think about that. Communication requires effort and care and revisiting. It's a big job. Okay, but it's obviously at the heart of collaboration. And my other favorite is Epictetus, the Greek philosopher. You might know this one. We have 2 of these, and but one of those for a very good reason. So those are the 2 things I leave you with. And now you can use that. Look at that segue. You can use that to go and have lunch now. Fabulous. See you, and see all of you online. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.